I'm Bindi Narula, and my role is the manager of Resettlement Integration Services Division here at the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. I work out of the Chisholm Resettlement Centre, which is transitional housing for government-assisted refugees. CCIS is the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, and we work with helping immigrants and refugees to become independent in Canada. We are a service provider for immigrants and refugees, and we have over 90 programs and over 300 staff who speak hundreds of languages. And so we try to provide services to clients in their native language because, like our CEO always says, people don't come to us when they're having a fantastic day. They come to us when things are bad. And so it's our role to try to help them through those difficult times, through referrals, through information, through orientation, through providing programming, training, and whatever other help they might need. Immigrants and refugees, there's a lot of reasons why they would be accessing our services. Oftentimes, life resettlement anywhere in the world is a difficult process because you're leaving behind what you know and what you're comfortable with. Often you don't know the language when you come here, and those become barriers to kind of accessing services. And so people come to us when they need help either with employment or they have resettlement issues, housing issues, when people can't afford to pay their rent or when they don't understand their utility bills, they've been overcharged, they have bed bugs, really when they have domestic violence issues. It can be something as simple as reading their mail to something as difficult as maybe a court case or criminal charges. Yes, we have a whole range of clients that come through, from single men, single women, single mothers. We also have families, often intergenerational families as well. And we also have a whole range from newborn children to seniors. And we try to have programs for all different demographics. We have programs for LGBTQ, we have programs for women, we have programs for family, as well as people who are, let's say, refugee claimants. We have programs for Canadians facing barriers to integration. So people who might have become Canadian citizens, but they still don't, they're not able to kind of fit into Canada the way they should, maybe after quite a few years. And so we offer a wide range of programming for different demographics. And so we just basically, it's important to do a needs assessment to find out what it is. And oftentimes the same client will access many of our programs to answer many of their questions. We're right now at the Margaret Chisholm Resettlement Centre, and this is our CCIS's building. It's a transitional housing for government-assisted refugees. Those are refugees that are chosen abroad and vetted by the Canadian government. They're brought here as permanent residents, so when they arrive to the airport, they're given permanent residency stamp in their passports, and then after that, basically, they can access programs and entitlements that Canadians or permanent residents can. So during they come to this house straight from the airport, and often it's the first home that they will have seen in Canada. They stay here for up to 14 days, sometimes a few more, depending on the needs of the family. Sometimes if it's a very big family, it takes time to find an appropriate house out in the community for that larger family. Or sometimes if there's a disability, that also can take a little bit of time because accessible housing, which is affordable, is very difficult to find. We act as a kind of a broker between landlords and the refugees because they often don't speak English. And so we advocate on their behalf, kind of letting the landlords know that they will have money for housing for the next year at least because they're sponsored by the government. And then also during those 14 days, what we do is we help them to get their documents, essential documents that they need to work and live in Canada, and get them into school, their kids into school, and also provide them with orientations on what they'll need to know in order to live well in Canada. For example, the climate, or or transportation. How do you take a bus? All that kind of stuff. It's said that it takes usually 7 years for people to feel like they belong once they've come, and it might take even a little bit longer for refugees, because refugees don't make the choice to come here, but rather they're forced to leave their countries. So often there's a bit of a struggle in accepting their new home. So an immigrant is somebody who is looking to usually improve their life, and so they're moving for usually economic opportunities, work, or for kind of a better quality of living. It is usually the immigrant's choice to leave their country and to make Canada their home. And they've done a lot of thinking, they've done a lot of research, they've done a lot of applications in order to come here. A refugee is somebody who has been forced to leave their home. They have been persecuted for reasons of political opinion, religion, ethnicity, nationality, or a membership of a particular social group. So that could be, for example, women fleeing domestic violence. It could be members of the LGBT community. It could be somebody who has had problems with the political regime in their country, and they are now being persecuted by that particular regime. And so they have the fear of going back to their country for fear of being either killed or oppressed. And so refugees often, this is because we live so kind of geographically, we're isolated from a lot of the places that have issues. And so what ends up happening is we're usually a second country of asylum. So the first country of asylum, for example, take the Syrians. When they left their country, they had to leave by force because they could not live in their country any longer. They usually would go to the neighboring countries, such as Lebanon, Jordan, or Turkey. And then many times they stayed in those places for many years, waiting to be vetted or chosen by the Canadian government or any other, the Swedish government, Norwegians, Americans, French, German governments, which provide some resettlement opportunities to people in camps. The problem is that less than 1% of the world's refugees, there's about 25 million refugees in the world, and less than 1% actually get settled in a year. There's over 64 million people who have been displaced or are refugees, that people have had to leave their home, either because of war, civil unrest, or environmental disasters. And that's a lot of people. So imagine how many people are kind of without home internationally. We deal with government-assisted refugees, and they come to us for housing. But we have seen a trend of refugee claimants coming into the city, and those refugee claimants actually into the country. And those refugee claimants come with very little resources and very little entitlements. They are in a process of they're in a bit of a status of limbo, because they claim protection in Canada, and they have to go through a hearing process in order to be accepted. That takes some time, and in the meantime, they have to apply for a work permit, apply for social assistance, and so sometimes they find themselves in a place where they don't have homes. We've had quite a few refugee claimants that we've referred to the In From the Cold because for temporary accommodation, because we can't find housing for our families that don't have any income yet. And so we really appreciate that partnership and at least providing the initial few weeks of or months of stay, so that we can try to find them something permanent as we work through their paperwork, getting them help through financial assistance. Definitely, Calgary Catholic Immigration Society has, we actually have thousands of volunteers that help with us every year in different capacities. So that you can either help with a particular division through administrative work, or you can help actually with working with the clients. We also have a volunteer program, which is a community connections program, where you actually befriend a newcomer, whether it be a refugee, usually a refugee, and when I say befriend them, you basically become their kind of welcoming committee to Canada, and for a year you would have tea or coffee at each other's homes, perhaps take the kids to the zoo. They would also invite you to their home for dinner or for their festivities, and so you start to establish a relationship with people. And I know sometimes it might seem like language would be a barrier, and it can be, but it's also amazing how you can really communicate with people without language. And so through, your facial expressions, or through just a smile. Yeah, food is an amazing kind of a bridge to communication. And our newcomers really respond to that, because they see that as their first friends in Canada. And often those is the beginning of a relationship that lasts for years and years. So we would love for people to come and to donate their time. We also take donations, and if you have any particular area or program that you would like to donate, maybe if you don't have time to spend with newcomers, you can always donate money through, especially around Christmas time. There's a lot of programs. We're actually planning to have a Christmas party for some of the refugee claimant families, because they are quite tight, and often, because I said before, they're still in limbo. They don't really have status here, and so we'd like to just help them out around Christmas time.